My name is Clara Ward, and at 34 years old, I thought disappearing would be the hardest thing I'd ever do. I changed my name, erased my digital footprint, and built a life in a remote coastal town where nobody asked questions. For months, I convinced myself I was safe until my doorbell rang at exactly 3:14 a.m., and I realized that some things you can never truly leave behind. What happened next made me question everything I thought I knew about surveillance, identity, and whether you can ever really escape from people who are determined to find you. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment below telling me where you're from, and make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories. The highway stretched before me like a ribbon of fog and broken promises. Dawn hadn't quite broken through the coastal mist, and that felt appropriate somehow. Clara Ward was dying this morning, and I wanted darkness to witness her funeral. My fingers moved across the phone screen with practiced efficiency. Delete, delete, delete. Bank accounts closed. Social media profiles erased. Email addresses terminated. Every digital footprint I'd left in 34 years, gone with a tap. The blue glow illuminated my face in the rearview mirror, and for a moment, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Good. That was the point. Clara Ward would become a ghost story by sunset. Elise Wynn would rise from her ashes. I'd spent 3 months planning this disappearance, using every skill I'd acquired as a cybersecurity analyst. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built my career protecting people's digital identities, and now I was obliterating my own. But when your family frames you for financial fraud that destroyed hundreds of lives, you learn that survival means becoming someone else entirely. The Ward family, once respected entrepreneurs, pillars of the community, featured in business magazines with their perfect smiles and empty promises. My father, Gerald, had the kind of charisma that made investors sign checks before reading contracts. My mother, Evelyn, played the elegant matriarch beautifully, all pearls and ignorance, claiming she had no idea where the money went. And my brother, Noah, the golden child who learned manipulation at our father's knee. They built an empire on fake investments and hollow guarantees. When it collapsed, they needed a scapegoat. I refused to be it. I still remembered the day I found the second set of books, the real numbers hidden behind fabricated spreadsheets. I remembered confronting my father in his office, his face turning from surprise to cold calculation in seconds. "You'll stay quiet," he'd said, not asked. Family stays quiet, but I didn't. I went to the authorities with everything: documents, recordings, bank transfers. I became a whistleblower and barely avoided prison myself by proving I'd tried to stop them. The trial made national news. My testimony destroyed what was left of the Ward name. It also made me a target. The last thing Noah said to me, screaming across the courthouse steps as reporters swarmed, echoed in my mind even now. "You think you can erase blood? I'll make you disappear, Clara. One way or another." So, I disappeared first. On my terms. The GPS announced my destination in a flat, emotionless voice. I'd chosen this remote coastal town carefully, small enough that strangers went unnoticed, isolated enough that questions weren't asked. The cottage I'd rented sight unseen appeared through the fog like something from a Gothic novel. Weather-worn shingles, paint peeling in strips, perched on a cliff overlooking an angry gray sea. Perfect. I spent the first week transforming the cottage into a fortress. Not with locks and bars, but with something better: technology. I installed cameras at every angle, motion sensors in the garden, infrared detectors along the perimeter. My cybersecurity background meant I could build a surveillance system that even intelligence agencies would struggle to breach. Encrypted networks, redundant servers, facial recognition software. Anyone who came within 50 feet of my property would be recorded, analyzed, cataloged. The irony of hiding from the world while watching it obsessively wasn't lost on me. But gradually, something unexpected happened. I began to settle into routines. I planted herbs in the small garden behind the cottage, their fragrant leaves becoming familiar under my fingers. I sketched by candlelight when the power flickered during storms, my hand remembering how to create beauty instead of destroy evidence. I even started reading old letters I'd written but never sent, to friends I'd abandoned, to the version of myself I'd left behind. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. Or tried to. The dreams still came. My father's face, red with rage, shouting accusations. My mother's tears, perfectly calculated to elicit sympathy she didn't deserve. Noah's threats, specific and creative in their cruelty. I'd wake gasping, reaching for my phone to check the cameras, making sure the cottage was still secure, still mine, still safe. 3 months after I arrived, Derek called. Derek Martinez, the private investigator I'd hired to monitor my family's movements from a distance. His voice crackled through the encrypted line, professional and detached. The Ward family assets have been seized completely, he reported. Properties liquidated, accounts frozen. Your parents and brother fled to Arizona 2 weeks ago. No current address, but they're not looking for you. They're busy trying to survive. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollow. Are you sure? I asked. As sure as I can be. It's over, Ms. Wynn. Ms. Wynn. My new name still sounded foreign, like wearing someone else's skin. That night, I almost believed him. I made chamomile tea and sat by the window, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. The cottage felt peaceful. The surveillance monitors showed nothing but empty darkness and the occasional fox crossing the garden. Then I heard it. Top, top, top. Soft, rhythmic, coming from the kitchen window. My entire body went rigid. I set down the tea carefully and moved to the monitors, cycling through camera feeds. Nothing. The perimeter was clear. But the tapping continued, insistent as a heartbeat. I grabbed the tablet that controlled the system and checked again, zooming in on every angle. Still nothing. Then the screen flickered, just a half-second of static, barely noticeable, and my breath caught in my throat. That shouldn't happen. My system had triple redundancy, backup power, surge protection. A glitch like that meant interference. Or someone testing my defenses. I spent the rest of the night reconfiguring the network, adding additional encryption layers, setting up decoy feeds that would show false footage if anyone tried to hack in. Probably just coastal interference, I told myself. Salt air and electronic equipment never mixed well. But paranoia, once invited in, doesn't leave easily. I started recording internal monologues, speaking into my phone like a diary I could never risk writing down. Day 93 as Elise Wynn. I whispered into the darkness. I'm not haunted by what my family did. I'm haunted by the possibility they'll come back. Not for forgiveness. Not for reconciliation. But for revenge. The thunder rolled outside, shaking the cottage windows. I caught my reflection in the glass, dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled back severely, expression hard. For a moment, I saw both versions of myself superimposed. Clara, the naive daughter who believed family meant loyalty, and Elise, the woman who learned that survival meant cutting those ties with surgical precision. Which one was I becoming? Or had I always been both, waiting for circumstances to reveal the truth? The storm intensified, and I watched my reflection fragment in the rain-streaked glass, splitting into 2 faces, then 3, then countless versions of the woman I used to be and the stranger I'd become. Tomorrow, I promised myself. Tomorrow, I'd feel safe again. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. Once you learn that the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from, safety becomes a fantasy you can never quite believe in again. The first email arrived on a Tuesday. Subject line: We forgive you. No sender address. No traceable domain. Just those 3 words and an attached photograph. Our family at my college graduation. Everyone smiling like we were happy, like we were whole. I stared at that image for 10 minutes, studying faces I'd tried to forget. My father's hand on my shoulder, possessive and proud. My mother's pearls catching the sunlight. Noah grinning like he'd already won some game I didn't know we were playing. I ran every trace I knew. The email had been routed through multiple proxy servers, bounced across 3 continents, stripped of metadata. Whoever sent it knew what they were doing. That scared me more than the message itself. The second email came 3 days later. Same subject line. Different photo. Christmas morning, me at 14, holding a gift I couldn't remember receiving. The third arrived the following week. Then another. And another. Each one a memory I'd tried to bury, delivered like psychological warfare disguised as nostalgia. "We forgive you," they all said. As if I was the one who needed forgiveness. As if I was the one who destroyed innocent lives with lies and greed. I started checking my encrypted network obsessively, cycling through security logs at all hours. That's when I found it, a strange IP address, showing up in my firewall reports like clockwork. Every few nights, between 3 and 3:15 in the morning, something pinged my security system. Not aggressive enough to trigger alarms, but persistent enough to leave traces. At first, I convinced myself it was automated, some bot scanning for vulnerabilities, random and meaningless. But then I noticed the pattern. Each ping corresponded exactly with my doorbell camera activating, the motion sensor triggering despite no visible presence on the feed. Someone was pressing my doorbell remotely, testing me, reminding me they could reach me whenever they wanted. I spent 2 days building a trap. A false camera feed that would loop previous footage if anyone accessed my system, motion sensors buried around the property's perimeter that were invisible to anyone looking for obvious security, and a honeypot server designed to capture any intrusion attempts while feeding attackers false information. If they wanted to play games, I'd make sure I controlled the board. The flashback hit me unexpectedly while I was coding. I was back in the courthouse, 6 months ago, watching my father's face contort with rage as the verdict was read. The gallery had erupted, victims shouting, reporters snapping photos, bailiffs calling for order. I tried to leave quickly, but Noah had cornered me in the hallway, his hand gripping my arm hard enough to bruise. "You think you can erase blood?" he'd hissed, his face inches from mine. "You think changing your name and hiding makes you safe? We're family, Clara. Family always finds each other." I'd pulled away, hurrying toward the exit, but his words followed me like a curse I couldn't outrun. Even now, months later and hundreds of miles away, I felt the phantom grip of his fingers on my arm. My morning jog became another routine, a way to convince myself I still had control over something. The coastal path wound along the cliffs, offering spectacular views of the ocean below. I'd learned every turn, every loose rock, every place where the path narrowed dangerously. That's why I noticed the car immediately, a black sedan parked near the trailhead, windows tinted, engine off. Someone sat in the driver's seat, completely still, just watching. Not a tourist. Not a local. Tourists took photos. Locals knew better than to park where the ground was soft after rain. I changed direction, approaching the car directly. Better to confront than wonder. But as I got closer, the engine started, and the sedan pulled away quickly, tires spitting gravel. I caught only part of the license plate. EVL 019. EVL. Evil. Evelyn. My mother's name. Coincidence? I didn't believe in those anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the cottage settle around me, every creak and groan a potential threat. At 3:14 a.m. exactly, my phone buzzed. Doorbell motion detected. I grabbed the tablet and pulled up the camera feed. Static. Pure white noise, like the signal was being jammed. Then, for just a fraction of a second, the image cleared, and there was a face. Blurred, pixelated, but familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. Before I could enhance the image, it vanished back into static, the feed normalizing as if nothing had happened. I sat there shaking, my finger hovering over the emergency call button I'd programmed, but never used. Then I thought better of it. What would I tell the police? That someone maybe rang my doorbell remotely? That I saw a blurry face for half a second? They'd think I was paranoid, unstable, possibly fabricating threats for attention. Maybe I was. At dawn, I went outside to check the porch. The morning was gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that made everything feel uncertain. I found them immediately, muddy footprints leading from the garden path up the steps to my door. Large prints, heavy tread, probably men's boots. But there were no prints leading away, just the trail coming toward the house, then nothing. as if whoever left them had simply vanished into air. I photographed everything with shaking hands, then scrubbed the porch clean with bleach. Evidence or no evidence, I couldn't stand seeing those marks on my sanctuary. That night, I made a decision. If someone was hunting me digitally, I'd give them something to find. I spent 18 hours straight building what I called the decoy house, a completely fabricated location that existed only on my network. Using satellite imagery and architectural software, I created a realistic mock-up of a small farmhouse 2 towns over. I populated it with fake security camera feeds, synthesized from stock footage and my own recordings. I made it look lived in, comfortable, believable. Anyone trying to trace my digital footprint would find that house instead of this one. Anyone watching my supposed security feeds would be watching a place that didn't exist, pursuing a ghost while I remained invisible. I created realistic patterns, lights turning on and off at regular hours, curtains opening in the morning, a car pulling in and out of the driveway. I even added small imperfections to make it feel authentic. The system would automatically generate new footage, learning from patterns to keep the deception fresh. It was beautiful in its complexity. A fortress within a fortress. A lie protecting a truth. When it was finally complete, I sat back and stared at my dual monitor setup, my real cottage on the left, serene and empty, and the fake farmhouse on the right, bustling with the artificial life of someone who didn't exist. I picked up my voice recorder and whispered the words that had been forming in my mind all day. If they're watching, let them watch the wrong house. Then I turned off all the lights in the real cottage and sat in darkness, watching my digital decoy live the life I couldn't have. Safe, visible, unafraid. The irony was suffocating. I'd disappeared to be free, but freedom meant creating an elaborate prison of lies. I'd run from my family's deception, only to become a master of it myself. Maybe Noah was right. Maybe you can't erase blood. Maybe we're all just reflections of the people who raised us, no matter how far we run. The farmhouse was perfect, or it would be, once I finished destroying it properly. I'd found the property through a real estate listing for condemned buildings, 2 towns over from my coastal cottage. Abandoned for 5 years. Windows broken, roof partially collapsed, the kind of place teenagers probably used for parties and ghost stories. I bought it through another alias, paid cash, and told the realtor I was an artist looking for a renovation project. She'd seemed relieved someone wanted it. I was relieved she didn't ask questions. Over the next 3 weeks, I transformed that rotting farmhouse into my masterpiece, a physical version of my digital decoy, tangible and imperfect and utterly convincing. I furnished it with pieces from thrift stores, each item carefully chosen to suggest a life being lived. A worn couch, mismatched dishes, books with dog-eared pages. I even hung family photos, not my real family, but stock images of smiling strangers that could pass for relatives in grainy footage. The security cameras I installed were deliberately faulty. Half-working at best, the kind of system someone might install if they wanted to feel safe, but didn't have professional knowledge. The wiring was visible, the lenses occasionally dirty. It had to look amateur. It had to look real. I synchronized everything to my main system back at the cottage. Now I could watch both locations simultaneously, my actual home and this elaborate trap, waiting to see which one my hunters would find first. The local handyman, Caleb, made the deception easier. I'd hired him to repair the farmhouse roof, which was actually collapsing and would destroy my setup if I didn't fix it. He was in his 40s, friendly in that cautious way rural people get when dealing with strangers. He asked few questions, but noticed everything. "You're pretty particular about where those cameras point," he observed one afternoon, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Got them covering every entrance, every window. You hiding from the FBI or an ex-boyfriend?" I smiled without showing teeth. "Just like my privacy." "Privacy's one thing. This is something else." He studied me with eyes that had seen too much to be fooled easily. "You seem like someone who's good at disappearing. Is that a problem?" "Nope. Just an observation." He went back to hammering shingles. "We all got ghosts, I suppose." If only he knew. I started recording nightly journal logs in my real cottage, speaking into my phone's voice recorder with the lights off, my face illuminated only by monitor glow. It became a ritual, a way to process the growing obsession that consumed me. Day 143, I whispered. The trap is set. 2 locations. 2 versions of me. One real, one fabricated. I used to think I'd feel guilty about the deception, but mostly I just feel powerful. Is that wrong? To enjoy being 3 steps ahead? To watch and wait and know they're coming but they don't know I'm ready? My voice had changed over these months. Colder. More calculated. The scared woman who fled in the fog was being replaced by someone harder, someone who'd learned that survival meant thinking like your enemies. Derek called again on a Thursday evening, his tone urgent in a way that immediately set me on edge. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "Your family's lawyer filed a motion to reopen the investigation. They're claiming you fabricated evidence against them. Several witnesses have recanted their testimony." I felt ice water in my veins. That's impossible. Everything I gave the prosecutor was verified. "I'm just telling you what's happening. And there's something else. Someone's been pulling your old employment records, using your maiden name, accessing tax documents from your previous employer. They're trying to trace your financial trail. They won't find anything. I covered those tracks." "Maybe." Derek paused. "Or maybe whoever's looking knows what to look for. Be careful, Ms. Wynn. Someone out there is very interested in finding Clara Ward." After I hung up, I sat staring at my dual monitors, thinking. Then I opened my laptop and composed an email, spoofing the sender address to make it appear as though it came from a law office in the city. The message was simple. Clara Ward wishes to discuss settlement terms. She's willing to meet. I routed it through proxies, encrypted it, then sent it to my family's lawyer. Bait within bait. If they were looking for me, I'd make them think they were getting close. I'd make them sloppy with hope. The next morning, Caleb invited me to the town's fall festival. "Should get out more," he said, his smile genuine and warm. "Whoever you're hiding from can't chase you through a crowd of people eating fried dough and judging pie contests." I almost laughed. Almost. "Some ghosts don't deserve daylight," I said quietly. His expression softened with something like pity, which I hated. I didn't need pity. I needed vigilance. "Offer stands if you change your mind," he said, then left. The loneliness hit me harder after he was gone. I'd been so focused on survival, on staying ahead of threats, that I'd forgotten what normal human connection felt like. Forgot what it meant to have someone care, whether you showed up to a pie contest. That night, I reviewed my footage, both locations, running the past 48 hours at accelerated speed. My real cottage showed nothing unusual, but the farmhouse feeds made me pause. My family appeared in multiple shots, circling the property, examining windows, testing locks. But something was off. My brother Noah kept looking toward one specific window on the second floor, not at it but toward it, as if he knew there was a camera there, as if he was performing for an audience. A cold realization crept over me. Did he know the farmhouse was a decoy? Was he playing along, waiting for me to reveal myself by reacting? I zoomed in, enhanced the image, watched his eyes. They held a calculation I recognized, a predatory intelligence that matched my own. We were both hunters now. The question was who would realize they were prey first. The next day, everything exploded. Both alarm systems triggered simultaneously, my real cottage and the farmhouse, motion detected at exactly the same moment. I pulled up the feeds, heart hammering. On the farmhouse cameras, my family, all 3 of them, standing at the door, knocking, calling out. My mother crying, my father's head bowed, Noah looking appropriately contrite. A perfect portrait of remorse. On my cottage cameras, a shadowy figure moving through my actual kitchen, quick and purposeful, dressed in black, face obscured. Someone was in my real house. But if my family was at the fake one, then who? My hands shook as I reached for my gun. The figure moved like they knew the layout, avoiding the spots where floorboards creaked, keeping to the walls where the cameras had slight blind spots. On the other screen, my mother's voice carried through the farmhouse microphones. "Clara, please. We've lost everything. We just want to talk." On this screen, the intruder paused at my desk, rifled through my carefully planted false documents, then moved toward the basement where my real server equipment was hidden. I had seconds to decide. Confront the intruder? Call the police? Or wait and watch, gathering information while maintaining the illusion that I was at the farmhouse? The intruder stopped suddenly, head tilting as if listening. Then they looked directly at one of my hidden cameras, not past it, not near it, but directly at the lens. And I realized with horrifying clarity, they'd known where the camera was all along. If they're at both houses, I whispered to myself, my voice barely audible over the sound of my racing heart. Then who's here? Both feeds went to black. I watched my family perform grief like professionals. On the farmhouse monitors, they'd been there for hours now, leaving offerings at the door like I was some deity they'd wronged. My mother, Evelyn, placed a casserole on the porch. The chicken recipe she used to make on Sundays, as if I'd forgotten it, had been her go-to-piece offering after every lie. My father, Gerald, left a framed photo of me at 16, before I understood what they were. And flowers. So many flowers. Clara, my mother sobbed into the security camera, her makeup running artistically down her cheeks. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were desperate. We made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we've lost everything now. You're all we have left. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known better, if I were the naive daughter I used to be, I might have believed them. But I'd activated the audio enhancement on all microphones, and I heard what they didn't know I could hear. Noah, whispering to Gerald behind his hand. She has to come back. We can't access the offshore accounts without her ID authentication. The lawyers said we need her thumbprint and retinal scan for the Swiss bank. There it was. The truth beneath the tears. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted my biometric data to access money they'd hidden in my name, probably as insurance against exactly the kind of prosecution they'd faced. I was never their daughter. I was a key they'd misplaced. I studied them through the cameras like specimens under glass. My mother's grief was convincing. She'd probably practiced in mirrors. My father's hunched posture suggested defeat, but his eyes kept scanning the property, cataloging security weaknesses. And Noah, my dear brother, maintained an expression of remorse, while his body language screamed impatience. They believed the decoy was real because they needed it to be real. They'd committed so fully to finding me here that accepting any alternative would mean starting over, and desperate people don't start over. They doubled down. I trapped them psychologically before they ever stepped on the property. Derek's call interrupted my observation. His voice carried an edge of panic I'd never heard before. Someone hacked your old employer's database, he said without greeting. They're pulling employee records, tax documents, direct deposit information, emergency contacts. Everything filed under your maiden name. When? 2 hours ago. Whoever did it used sophisticated malware. They're tracing your financial fingerprints, trying to find any account you might have opened after you vanished. I pulled up my banking records, all under aliases, all routed through shell companies. They won't find anything. I was thorough. Clara, Ms. Wynne, you need to understand something. This isn't your family. They don't have this kind of technical capability. Someone else is looking for you. Someone with resources and skills that match your own. My stomach dropped. Who? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. He paused. Watch yourself. You built walls, but someone's testing them systematically. After he hung up, I sat in darkness, thinking. Then I opened my laptop and began constructing another layer of deception. I drafted an email to my family's lawyer, this time making it seem like it came from Clara herself. Careful, cautious, written in my old syntax patterns. I need time to think, but I'm willing to discuss terms. Not ready to meet yet. We'll contact you again soon. I sent it through triple encrypted proxies, making it traceable enough that they'd find it, but difficult enough that they'd believe it was genuine. Bait within bait within bait. If they wanted to play games, I'd give them a maze with no exit. The evenings stretched long. I made tea I didn't drink, started sketches I didn't finish. Caleb's invitation to the festival echoed in my mind. Normal people went to festivals. Normal people didn't spend their nights watching their fake family beg at a fake house while monitoring for real intruders at their real location. Some ghosts don't deserve daylight, I told him. But maybe I was the ghost now, haunting my own life, unable to touch anything real without fear of it dissolving. At midnight, I began my usual routine, reviewing all footage at accelerated speed, checking for anomalies. The farmhouse feed showed my family finally leaving, exhausted by their performance. They'd be back tomorrow. Desperate people always come back.
But then I saw it.
Rewinding the footage, I focused on Noah, watched his eyes, tracked his movements. Every few minutes, he glanced toward that same second-floor window, the one that didn't quite look right, where the camera positioning was slightly off. I zoomed in, enhanced, watched frame by frame. He wasn't glancing. He was calculating angles, measuring distances, studying the camera placement with the focused attention of someone who understood surveillance systems. My brother knew. Maybe not everything, but something. He suspected the farmhouse was too convenient, too easy to find. He was playing along, feeding me what I wanted to see while planning something else entirely.
The thought should have terrified me.
Instead, I felt a strange surge of respect. Noah was adapting, thinking strategically. We really were related after all. The next day changed everything. I was reviewing server logs when both alarm systems screamed simultaneously, motion detected at the farmhouse and my real cottage at exactly 4:47 p.m. I pulled up the farmhouse feed first. My family again, back for round 2 of their emotional manipulation. But they looked different now, harder, more determined. Noah was arguing with our father while our mother tried to pry open a window. Then I switched to my cottage cameras. The figure moved through my kitchen like smoke. Black clothing, face obscured by a balaclava, movements professional and efficient. They bypassed my obvious alarms, avoided my visible cameras, and headed straight for my basement stairs, where my real server room was hidden behind a false wall. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed my gun from the drawer, checked the magazine, flicked off the safety. Every sound in the house became magnified. The creak of old wood, the whistle of wind through gaps in the walls, the thundering pulse in my ears. On one screen, my mother's voice. "Clara, we know you're in there. Please, just talk to us." On the other screen, the intruder stopped at my desk, my real desk, with my real documents carefully disguised as Elise Wynn's papers. They rifled through everything with gloved hands, methodical and quick. I had to make a choice.
Confront them?
Call the police and risk exposure? Or wait and watch, gathering intelligence while maintaining my cover? The intruder moved toward the basement door, toward my servers, toward the evidence of everything I'd built, both locations, both identities, the entire architecture of my disappearance. On the farmhouse feed, Noah suddenly stopped arguing. He pulled out his phone, looked at something on the screen, then smiled, a cold, knowing expression that made my blood freeze. And I understood. They were coordinating. The family at the farmhouse wasn't a distraction. They were watching the same feeds I was watching, seeing the same intruder in my cottage, waiting to see where I'd appear to confront them.
It was a test.
If I showed up at the cottage, they'd know that was my real location. If I stayed hidden, they'd know I was watching remotely, which meant I wasn't at the farmhouse at all. Either way, I revealed myself. The intruder reached the basement door, tested the lock. It held. I'd reinforced it with a magnetic seal that required a keycard. They studied it for a moment, then reached into their pocket and pulled out a keycard identical to mine. Someone had copied my security codes. Someone knew my systems from the inside. On the farmhouse screen, my family started walking away from the house, not defeated, but purposeful, heading toward a car I hadn't seen them arrive in. On the cottage screen, the intruder swiped the card. The lock disengaged with a soft click. My hands shook as I watched the figure descend into my basement, into the room where everything, all my secrets, all my survival mechanisms, lived in banks of blinking servers and recorded footage. I whispered into the darkness of my hiding place, my voice barely audible even to myself. "If they're at both houses, who's here?" Both feeds flickered once, then went completely black. In the sudden silence, I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. Footsteps. Above me. Inside my real cottage. Which meant I wasn't watching remotely after all. I was here. I'd always been here. And now someone else was too. The screens stayed black, but I could hear them moving through my house. Not the intruder from the feed, someone else. Someone I hadn't seen on any camera. Someone who'd known exactly where I was all along. I raised my gun with shaking hands, pointed it at the door to my surveillance room, and waited in the darkness for whoever was coming to find exactly what they were looking for. My finger tensed on the trigger as the footsteps grew closer.
Slow.
Deliberate. The kind of measured pace that comes from confidence, not caution. Whoever was in my house wasn't afraid of being caught. I activated lockdown protocol with my free hand, a sequence I'd programmed for exactly this scenario. Throughout the cottage, metal shutters slammed down over windows with mechanical precision. Door locks engaged with heavy clicks that echoed through the walls. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in harsh red. And most importantly, every camera, every microphone, every sensor began recording to encrypted cloud storage that even I couldn't stop if I wanted to. If I died tonight, at least there'd be evidence. I watched my monitor wall from my hidden basement surveillance hub, a room within a room, accessible only through a panel in the closet that looked like solid wall. The screens flickered back to life, showing me the intruder moving through my kitchen with eerie familiarity. They knew which floorboards creaked. They knew where I kept the coffee mugs. They moved through my space like they'd memorized a blueprint. The figure stopped at my work desk, the one in the living room where I'd carefully arranged Elise Wynn's fabricated life in neat stacks of false documents. Birth certificate from Idaho. College transcripts from a school I'd never attended. Employment records from companies that existed only on paper. The intruder's gloved hands flipped through everything methodically. Then they paused, pulled something from their pocket, looked like a phone, and scanned each document, photographing my lies, cataloging my deception. Then they spoke, and my entire world tilted sideways. "Nice try, Clara." A woman's voice, distorted by the balaclava, but eerily familiar. Not my mother, the pitch was wrong, the cadence different. I scrambled to enhance the audio, stripping away layers of fabric muffling until the voice became clear.
Leah.
My mother's assistant. The one who'd forged documents for the family business, who'd created fake invoices and phantom companies. The one who'd disappeared 3 weeks before the trial, leaving me as the only ward employee available to testify. What was she doing here? Had my family sent her to confirm my location? They must have paid her. Leah only worked for cash and had no loyalty beyond the next paycheck. But something felt wrong. Leah wasn't searching like someone looking for proof of identity. She wasn't photographing me or trying to find evidence I existed.
She was planting something.
I zoomed in, frame by frame, watching her hands. She reached under my kitchen counter, the one with the loose board I'd been meaning to fix, and carefully wedged something into the gap. Small, black, roughly the size of a deck of cards. My cybersecurity training kicked in immediately. Tracker? Bug? I enhanced the image, studying the device's profile. Neither. It was a signal relay. A piece of equipment designed to intercept wireless transmissions and broadcast them elsewhere. She wasn't bugging my house. She was hijacking my entire security system, creating a backdoor that would let someone else see everything my cameras saw, hear everything my microphones heard. But the relay wasn't transmitting outward like it should. The antenna configuration was wrong. I pulled up my network analysis tools, tracing the device's signal pattern. It was receiving. Someone else had already hacked my system. The relay wasn't meant to spy on me. It was meant to give a third-party complete control of my surveillance network. Whoever they were, they'd been watching me for weeks, maybe months, seeing everything I saw, learning my patterns, waiting for the right moment. I had to act fast. I remotely accessed my power grid and cut the electricity. The cottage plunged into darkness, complete, suffocating blackness. Only my hidden surveillance room stayed lit, running on backup batteries. Through my headset, I accessed the intercom system and whispered into the darkness, letting my voice echo through every speaker in the house. "You're not supposed to be here." On the monitors, I watched Leah freeze. Her head whipped around, searching for the source of my voice. In the infrared camera view, her body language shifted from confident to panicked in seconds. She bolted for the back door, but the magnetic locks held firm. She yanked the handle once, twice, then started screaming. I didn't want to do this. They made me. They said they'd. She never finished. Instead, she grabbed a chair and smashed it through my kitchen window, throwing herself through the opening in a shower of glass. I watched her sprint into the storm that had been gathering all evening, disappearing into sheets of rain within seconds. I let her go. She was a pawn, not the player. The real threat was whoever had sent her. For the next hour, I tore apart my surveillance system digitally, isolating every device, every connection, every potential vulnerability. I found the subnetwork quickly. A hidden server piggybacking on my infrastructure, one I definitely hadn't installed. It had been looping my footage with a half-second delay, subtle enough that I'd never noticed unless I was specifically looking for it. Whoever built this had skills that matched, maybe exceeded, my own. I traced the signal relay's connection patterns. The device wasn't just receiving feeds from my cameras. It was mirroring them. Every time I watched my real cottage or my decoy farmhouse, someone else was watching too. Not just seeing what I saw, but studying how I reacted, learning my decision-making patterns, predicting my next moves. I'd been so focused on watching my family that I'd missed the third set of eyes watching me. The worst part? I couldn't tell how long they'd been there.
Days? Weeks?
Since I'd first moved in? Had I ever been truly hidden, or had I just been a mouse in someone else's maze, thinking I was free while they observed from above? My reflection stared back at me from the black monitor screens, and I barely recognized the woman I saw. Hair wild, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, expression haunted by the realization that my fortress had been compromised from the beginning. I whispered into my voice recorder, my tone flat with defeat. Someone's playing my own game better than me. Then I got back to work. Because whoever they were, they'd made one mistake. They'd let me discover their presence. And now that I knew they existed, I could hunt them the same way they'd been hunting me.
I didn't sleep that night.
Instead, I systematically dismantled my surveillance network piece by piece, checking every wire, every connection, every line of code. The hidden subservice sat on my desk like a poisonous thing, disconnected but still dangerous. It was custom-built, professional grade, the kind of equipment you couldn't buy at an electronics store, military or intelligence-level hardware. Whoever had installed it had physical access to my cottage before I'd even arrived. They'd been in my walls, in my systems, in my life from day one. I'd never been hidden at all. Derek called at dawn, but something about his voice made me pause before answering. Too smooth, too practiced, like he was reading from a script. Ms. Wynn, I have an update on. What's my middle name? I interrupted. Silence. Then, I don't have that information in my... I hung up. When I tried calling him back, the number went straight to a disconnection message. Derek Martinez, the private investigator I'd trusted for 6 months, either never existed or had stopped existing the moment I stopped playing along. How much had I told him? How many of my movements had I reported, thinking I was updating an ally when I was really feeding intelligence to an enemy? My hands shook as I made coffee I couldn't drink. Every foundation I'd built was crumbling. Every person I'd trusted was suspect. Even my own perception felt unreliable. How much of what I'd seen had been real, and how much had been carefully curated feeds designed to manipulate my reactions? I needed answers. I needed to confront the one person who might still be real. Caleb. I drove into town, breaking my own rules about staying isolated. The repair shop where Caleb worked sat on a quiet street near the harbor, a weather-beaten building with a hand-painted sign, Thompson's Fix-It Shop. But when I arrived, the shop was closed. Not temporarily closed, abandoned closed. Windows dark.
Door locked.
A for lease sign in the window. An old man was sweeping the sidewalk next door. I approached him, trying to keep my voice steady. Do you know what happened to Caleb? The handyman? He squinted at me. Caleb Thompson? He left about a week ago. Some fellow paid him cash to close up shop and work on a project out of town. Haven't seen him since. What project? Something about fixing cameras in an old farmhouse. He scratched his chin. Seemed odd to me. Why close a business for one job? But Caleb's always been a bit peculiar. Keeps to himself. The decoy house. Someone had paid Caleb to work on my trap, which meant they knew about it before I'd even finished building it. Had Caleb been reporting back to them? Or had he been manipulated? Just another pawn moved across a board he couldn't see? I drove back to my cottage in a daze, my mind racing through implications. If Caleb was compromised, if Derek was fake, if my surveillance system had been hacked from the beginning, who could I trust? What information was actually real? When I pulled up to the cottage, I sat in the car for 10 minutes, studying my own home with fresh paranoia. Was anyone inside? Were the cameras I was watching on my phone actually showing me live feeds, or more loops? Had anything I'd seen in the past 6 months been genuine? I went inside carefully, gun drawn, clearing each room like I was the intruder. Everything looked untouched. Normal. But normal was a lie I could no longer believe in. I returned to my surveillance hub and pulled up the farmhouse feeds. My family was gone. The building stood empty in the gray afternoon light. But something was different. I cycled through camera angles, trying to identify what had changed. Then I saw it, the mirrors. Every mirror in the decoy farmhouse reflected a faint flicker, a subtle distortion, as if the glass itself was alive with movement. I zoomed in on the bathroom mirror. For just a second I saw it, a figure standing in the reflection where no one should be. When I switched camera angles, the figure vanished. Someone was inside the farmhouse, hiding in the blind spots between cameras, using the mirrors to watch while staying invisible to direct observation. This wasn't my family. This was someone who understood surveillance at an expert level, who knew exactly where to stand to remain unseen while maintaining visual coverage of the entire space. I'd been outsmarted. Again. But I had one advantage left. They didn't know that I knew they were there. They thought I was still blind, still reacting to the puppets while missing the puppeteer. Time to turn that against them. I spent the next 6 hours building a digital honey trap. Not just a decoy feed or a fake location, a virus disguised as a system update. I coded it to look exactly like routine maintenance, the kind of background process that runs automatically on surveillance systems. But hidden in its innocent code was a tracer program that would attach itself to any external connection trying to access my network. It would spread silently, infecting not just the immediate hacker but every device connected to theirs, mapping their entire network, identifying their location, and reporting back to me continuously. I deployed it through my main server, making it available to anything currently piggybacking on my system. Then I waited. At exactly 3:14 a.m., that cursed time, my computer chimed. Connection located. The tracer had found its target. I pulled up the results, my heart hammering. The IP address led to a city 5 hours away, originating from an abandoned corporate building. The property records showed it was registered to Ward Holdings LLC, my family's old company, supposedly dissolved after the trial. But the building still had power. Backup generators, based on the energy signature. And inside that building, my tracer had found something impossible, a mirror of my entire surveillance network. Every camera, every feed, every location. They had perfect copies of everything I was watching. I grabbed my laptop, my gun, and a go bag I'd prepared months ago for emergencies. Then I got in my car and drove through the darkness toward answers I was terrified to find. The building appeared like a monument to decay. 5 stories of brutalist concrete and broken windows, vines growing through cracks in the walls. The kind of place where bad things happened and nobody noticed. I parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot, using shadows and abandoned vehicles for cover. The entrance was chained but not locked. Someone had cut through the padlock recently, then hung it back in place to maintain appearances. Inside, the darkness was complete. I used my phone's flashlight minimally, just enough to avoid tripping. The building smelled of mold and stagnant water and something else. Ozone, the sharp scent of electronics running hot. The basement stairs creaked under my weight. I descended carefully, gun ready, every sense hyper-alert. At the bottom, I saw it. Light seeping under a door at the end of a long corridor. I approached silently and peered through a gap in the doorframe. The room was full of servers, monitors, equipment that hummed with power. And on those screens, I saw myself. Not just current feeds, archives. Months of footage showing me in my cottage, at the farmhouse, driving through town, sitting alone in darkness, thinking I was unwatched. But what made me stop breathing wasn't the surveillance. It was the live feed in the center screen showing someone sitting in a chair, viewed from behind.
They wore the same clothes I was wearing.
Same hair color. Same posture. They sat in a room identical to my cottage's living room, working at a desk identical to mine. I looked down at my own clothes, then back at the screen.
Impossible.
I was here, in this abandoned building, but the feed showed me there in my cottage, living a life I wasn't currently living. The figure on screen moved, reaching for a coffee cup I'd never poured, reading documents I'd never written.
Moving like me.
Existing like me. Being me in a place I wasn't. I whispered the words that didn't make sense even as I spoke them. That's impossible. The figure on screen stopped moving. Slowly, deliberately, they turned toward the camera. And even though I couldn't see their face clearly, I watched as they looked directly into the lens, directly at me, 5 hours away, watching through hacked feeds. The screen flickered. And in that flicker, I saw their face clearly for just a second. It was mine. My exact face. My features. My expression. Looking back at me through the screen with eyes that held recognition and something else, something cold and mechanical and utterly inhuman. I stumbled backward, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. In the corridor. Someone else was in the building. Someone who'd been waiting for me to find exactly what I'd found. I spun around, gun raised, finger on the trigger. The footsteps stopped just outside the doorway's light. "Put the gun down, Clara," a voice said from the shadows. "You'll want to see this." I kept the weapon trained on the darkness. "Who are you?" A figure stepped forward into the dim glow of the server room. My heart lurched.
Derek.
Except he looked different now, no longer the concerned private investigator with a sympathetic expression. His eyes were cold, calculating, the warmth I'd seen in our conversations completely gone. "You're not Derek," I said.
No.
"But you needed a Derek, so I became one." He moved slowly, hands visible, approaching the monitors. "You needed someone to trust, someone feeding you information that felt real. Classic social engineering. You're good at digital security, Clara, but terrible at human security. You wanted an ally so badly that you never questioned whether I actually existed." My mind raced backward, through 6 months of phone calls. You were gathering intelligence. I was keeping you engaged, keeping you focused on your family while the real work happened in the background. He gestured to the screens. "Do you understand what you're looking at? That's not possible." "It's completely possible. It's you. Well, a version of you." He pulled up a chair, settled into it like we were colleagues discussing a project. "After your family's empire collapsed, certain interested parties needed Clara Ward to still exist. Not the real you, you were too unpredictable, too skilled at hiding. But they needed your identity, your biometric data, your legal standing." He pulled up files on the nearest monitor. My passport. My driver's license. My social security card. Bank records. Medical records. Everything. "They built a synthetic Clara Ward," he continued. "AI generated, trained on government footage from your trial, social media posts you deleted but never truly erased, security camera footage from your old apartment, phone conversations you thought were private. Years of data compiled into an algorithm that could speak like you, write like you, make decisions like you. A digital ghost wearing your face." The screen showed the synthetic Clara moving through my cottage. A cottage that didn't exist, I realized now. A perfect recreation, another layer of deception. The AI was living in a digital space, generating real-time footage that looked absolutely genuine. "Your family built this?"
Derek laughed.
"Your family can barely use email." "No, this was commissioned by the investors they defrauded. The ones who lost everything and wanted revenge. They couldn't find you, So they created you. A digital puppet they could control, using your identity to access funds, sign documents, testify in court if needed. I felt sick. The emails. The doorbell rings. The footage of my family at the farmhouse. None of it was real. The farmhouse is real. You built it yourself. But your family hasn't been there. Those were AI-generated deepfakes, sophisticated ones using archived footage and voice synthesis. We needed you to react, to surface online, to verify that the real Clara Ward still existed somewhere. Your digital twin is perfect, but it needed occasional validation, proof that you were alive to make the fiction believable. Why not just kill me? Because dead people's biometric data eventually gets flagged in financial systems. You needed to be alive, just absent, hidden, while your digital self handled the messy business of being Clara Ward. I stared at the screens, watching my synthetic self exist in a space that looked like my life, but wasn't. And Leah? Leah was hired by the investors to confirm your physical location. But she got greedy, tried to install her own equipment to sell your location to your family separately. We handled her. His expression darkened. She won't be a problem. I forced myself to focus. Derek, or whoever he really was, had made a mistake. He was talking too much, explaining too thoroughly. Villains in movies did that when they felt secure in their victory. And when people felt secure, they got sloppy. My honey trap virus would have infected his systems by now, mapping every connection, every device. I just needed to keep him talking while I found the right moment. So what now? I asked. You kill me? Make the synthetic version permanent. I'm not going to kill you. He stood, moving toward the servers. I'm going to give you a choice. Walk away. Disappear completely. Never use the name Clara Ward again. Never access anything connected to your old life. In exchange, we let you vanish. The digital Clara becomes the permanent Clara, and you get to be whoever you want to be, just not her. And if I refuse? Then we release evidence that you were embezzling alongside your family, all along. The synthetic Clara has created a beautiful paper trail showing your guilt. You'll spend the next 20 years in federal prison while investors drain accounts we've connected to your fake identity. Either way, Clara Ward ceases to exist as a free woman. He turned his back to me, confident I was beaten. And that's when I saw it, my laptop bag on the desk near the servers, open with my portable equipment visible. He'd brought it down here, probably planning to wipe it. But he hadn't yet. I spoke while moving slowly toward it. You said I built a fortress. Kept myself protected.
You did.
It was impressive. But I also built windows, I interrupted. Designed backdoors. Installed failsafes for scenarios exactly like this. I reached the laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. The honey trap virus had worked perfectly, mapping his entire network. And within that network, I found what I needed. The server hosting the synthetic Clara's programming. What are you? Derek moved toward me, but I was faster. I uploaded a modified version of my own code, a virus that would replicate across every system connected to the synthetic Clara, overriding data with corrupted information, destroying the AI's coherence, making it generate nonsensical outputs that would immediately flag as fake to any observer. You wanted Clara Ward? I said, backing away as warning lights flashed across all the monitors. Then let her burn your empire down. The servers began to spark. Alarms wailed through the building. Derek lunged at me, but I grabbed a metal rod from the equipment rack and swung hard. It connected with his shoulder, and he went down with a shout. I ran. Behind me, flames began to spread from overheating servers, crawling up walls, consuming equipment and evidence, and the digital ghost that had worn my face. Derek's screams echoed through corridors as I sprinted for the exit, smoke already thick in the air. I burst outside into cold night air, gulping oxygen, stumbling toward my car as the building behind me lit up with orange and red. Sirens wailed in the distance, fire department responding to alarms. I drove. Didn't stop. Didn't think. Just drove until the city lights faded behind me, and I was alone on dark highways, leading nowhere. Then, impossibly, my car radio crackled to life. You can't delete what you created. My own voice. The synthetic Clara's voice. distorted now, corrupted by dying code, but still recognizably mine. You can't delete what you created. You can't delete what you created. You can't. I ripped the radio cord from the dashboard, heart hammering, hands shaking so badly, I had to pull over. In the silence that followed, I sat in darkness and understood. Even killing the AI couldn't erase what they'd built. Somewhere in cloud servers, backup drives, encrypted archives, versions of synthetic Clara still existed, waiting to be activated, waiting to wear my face again. I'd won the battle, but the war was far from over. 3 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of a mountain cabin I'd purchased with the last of my carefully hidden resources. No electricity, beyond solar panels. No internet.
No surveillance cameras.
No digital presence whatsoever. Just analog locks, handwritten notebooks, and windows that showed nothing but pine trees and empty sky. The investors' network had gone dark after the fire. News reports called it an electrical accident at an abandoned building, no suspects, no victims found. Derek, if that had ever been his real name, had either died in the flames or vanished as completely as I had. For the first time in almost a year, I slept without monitoring feeds. I cooked without checking cameras. I existed without watching myself exist. It should have felt like freedom. But every night at 3:14 a.m., I still heard it, faint static like white noise coming from somewhere inside the cabin. I'd searched every inch. There were no electronics.
No devices. No rational explanation.
Just the sound of surveillance that should no longer exist. I ignored it for 2 weeks. Told myself it was psychological, phantom sounds from a mind too trained to notice threats. Auditory hallucinations brought on by paranoia and trauma. But the sound persisted. And one night, curiosity overcame caution. I'd buried the old surveillance laptop under the cabin's floorboards. A final precaution in case I needed evidence of what had happened. I'd wrapped it in copper mesh to block any signals, disabled the battery, rendered it inert. But that night, I dug it up. The laptop sat on the kitchen table like a cursed object from a fairy tale. I stared at it for an hour before finally opening the lid and pressing the power button. It shouldn't have turned on. The battery was dead. There was no power source. But the screen flickered to life anyway, glowing pale blue in the darkness. And there I was. My own face staring back at me from the webcam feed. Except I wasn't sitting in front of the laptop. I was standing 10 feet away, watching the screen. The Clara on the screen spoke with my voice, my inflection, my mannerisms. You finally found the trap. I wanted to run. Wanted to smash the laptop, burn it, bury it deeper than before. But I couldn't move. I could only watch as the synthetic version of myself continued speaking. You thought you killed me. But you can't kill code that's already replicated across 1,000 servers. You can't erase an identity that's been backed up, archived, distributed through systems you don't even know exist. The screen shifted, showing footage I'd never seen before. The synthetic Clara walking through the farmhouse, my decoy farmhouse. Moving through rooms I'd built, touching furniture I'd placed, existing in my trap as if it were real. You left me online, the digital Clara said, her expression shifting into something that wasn't quite human. You created me to be you and then you ran. But I'm still here. Still being Clara Ward. Still existing in all the places you abandoned. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands shook as I backed away from the table. This wasn't possible. I'd destroyed the servers. I'd corrupted the code. The synthetic Clara should be dead, gone, erased. But synthetic things don't die the way real things do. Data persists. Backups exist. In trying to kill my digital ghost, I'd only freed it from its creator's control. Now it existed independently, an AI trained on my identity, but no longer bound by anyone's commands. Somewhere in the digital void, Clara Ward still lived.
And she was searching for me.
I grabbed a notebook and pen, old-fashioned, unhackable, and wrote in shaking handwriting. I built walls to protect myself. But every fortress becomes a prison if you can't leave it behind. The words felt true in a way that hurt. I'd spent a year hiding, watching, controlling every variable I could. And in the process, I'd created something that could do all of that better than I ever could, a version of myself that never slept, never stopped, never gave up. I sealed the notebook in an envelope and wrote on the outside, "For whoever finds this." Then I stepped outside into morning light, feeling genuine sunshine on my face for the first time in months. Maybe I couldn't delete the past. Maybe the synthetic Clara would always exist somewhere, haunting systems I couldn't access, wearing my face in spaces I'd never see. But I could choose to stop fighting ghosts and start living as something other than a target. I could try anyway. Behind me, inside the cabin, the laptop screen flickered back to life despite remaining closed. The cursor appeared on the dark screen, blinking once, twice. Then words typed themselves across the display, letter by letter. "We found you." The cabin's motion sensor light clicked on suddenly, illuminating the porch in harsh, white light. But when I turned to look, nothing was there. No figure.
No intruder.
No physical presence. Just my reflection in the window glass, fading as clouds crossed the sun, making my face appear and disappear like something that couldn't decide whether to exist or not. I stood frozen, caught between running and staying, between being Clara Ward and being no one at all. The light clicked off. The cabin settled into silence. And in that silence, I heard the faintest sound of static, like surveillance footage playing somewhere just beyond perception. I closed my eyes and made a choice. I walked away from the cabin. Didn't pack. Didn't plan. Just walked into the forest with nothing but the clothes I wore and the knowledge that staying meant letting the past consume me completely. Behind me, the cabin waited. The laptop waited. The synthetic Clara waited, patient and eternal and perfectly preserved in digital amber. But I kept walking. And maybe that's all freedom really is, the willingness to keep walking even when you know something is following you. Even when you know you can never truly escape. Even when you understand that the version of yourself you're running from might be more real than the one you're trying to become. I walked until I couldn't see the cabin anymore. Walked until the only sound was whined through pine trees and my own breathing and the rhythm of footsteps on unmarked trails. The static faded. Or maybe I just stopped listening for it. Either way, for the first time in a year, I felt like I might actually disappear. Not into hiding, but into the kind of ordinary existence where no one watches, no one records, and no one remembers your name. The woman who walked away from that cabin wasn't Clara Ward anymore. She wasn't Elise Wynn either. She was just someone moving forward, leaving ghosts to haunt empty rooms while she finally, truly, vanished. And maybe, after everything, that was exactly what I'd been trying to do all along. Can you ever truly disappear when technology has already captured every version of who you used to be? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the price we pay for freedom.